Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Mr. A's Math Podcast. In today's episode we're going to do another Common Core sample question review. This will hopefully help get you prepared for the upcoming Common Core Regents on Tuesday. And so we're going to work through some questions here. I will put the PDF in the video description below so you can download the PDF I'm working from. I strongly recommend you do that. That way you can follow right along. I've also tried to make the questions nice and big so you should be able to read them pretty well from the video. So let's get started. Here we have a question asking us to find the coordinates of a point on a directed line segment. Okay, so that just means it starts at K and goes to L. It has a direction. That partitions the segment into a ratio of 3 to 2. So the first thing I want to do is draw a picture for this. Anytime I can create a picture in geometry, that's a good strategy. Since K, -5, -4 is down in quadrant 3, and L, 5, 1 is up in quadrant 1, I'm going to need the whole 4 quadrants. So, whoops, looks like my pen is getting a little bit light there. I'll swap that out. So K, -5, 4, I could put that perhaps down here. Excuse me, -5, -4. And L, 5, 1, I'll put that perhaps over here. And so what they're asking me to do is break this line segment into the ratio 3 to 2. That means that I need to find some measurement where 3 times that number fits into that space and 2 times that number fits into that space. Well, the trick to dividing a line segment like this proportionally is that you first have to think about the change in x and the change in y. Right? This line segment is slanted, at least in this coordinate plane, which means you have to change your x and y coordinate to get from K to L. That means that if I want to divide it in the ratio 3 to 2, I have to also divide my x and y in the ratio 3 to 2. So if I can imagine there's some point on the side here that divides my y into the ratio 3 to 2, maybe that's about there, and there's some point that divides my x into the ratio 3 to 2, let's say that's about there, I can label these pieces 3x, 2x, and 3y, 2y to help me see what's going on, then this point right here, let's call it P, is the point that we're looking for. The point that if I go if I go 3 to 2 on my change in x, and I go 3 to 2 on my change in y, that's going to give me 3 to 2 on the original line segment. So to figure out that point is really quite straightforward. What you're going to need to do is think about what the total change in x is. Right, the delta x over here is from -5 up to +5, so that's a change of 10. And you're also going to want to think about what your delta y is. That's this side. Y starts at -4, goes up to +1, so the delta y is 5. So this yields 2 equations. First we have that 3x plus 2x equals 10, from this 3 and 2 being 10. And we also have 3y plus 2y equal to 5. That comes from this 3 and 2y being equal to 5. So over here we get y is equal to 5. On this side over here we get x is equal to 2. And now we just have to sub back in. So to get from K to P, I have to change my x coordinate by 3 x's. In other words, by 6. So I was at -5. The new coordinate for P is going to be -5 plus 6. All right, so that's where I started, plus the 3 times 2 to move me over. My new y coordinate for point P started at -4, but to that I'm going to have to change my y by 3y. Since, oh my gosh, I wrote y equals 5 over there, that's clearly not right. Y is only equal to 1. Right? 3 plus 2 is 5, so 5 equals 5, that's 1. So if I'm going to change my y by 3, that means 3 times 1, just 3. So my y is going to be -4 plus that 3. And here I have the coordinates of point P. -5 and 6 is 1, comma, -4 and 3, also 1. So notice my graph isn't perfectly to scale, but that's okay because this was just a sketch, right? When I'm drawing something freehand like this, it's a sketch, not necessarily to scale, because 1, 1 would be, a little bit higher over there. So that's all that means. 1, -1. Ooh, I'm really batting 1,000 here, aren't I? Sorry, -4 plus 3 is -1, so my sketch actually is pretty good. That kind of looks like 1, -1, doesn't it? I feel better. So here's one way that you can solve this problem, and this is the method you need to have in your pocket if these numbers don't work out nicely. They could give you a point where the coordinate you need to find is like 2.7, 3 and a third. So this will work no matter what the numbers are. However, there is another way to think about this that's a little bit simpler if you have nice numbers. Let me go back to that original point. Oh, excuse me, the original line segment, right? KL. Notice that the slope of KL is delta y over delta x, 5 over 10, which is to say 1/2, right? So that means if I start at point K and I go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, etc., I'll eventually get to L. So think about how many times that has to happen. If you go up 1 over 2, and then up 1 over 2, and then up 1 over 2, and then up 1 over 2, let me just move that over a little so you can see better. Up 1 over 2, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's going to get me to point L. Take a minute to verify that, right? I went up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, that's my delta Y, and I went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, that's my delta X, 10. So, to get from K to L, I have to go up and over 5 times. Well, if I want a ratio of 3 to 2, that just means I'm going to go up and over 1, 2, 3 times. Right there. And that's going to be my point P. Right? Do you see what happened there? That is up and over 3 times. So that's going to be 3 times the length of this. Well, excuse me, that ratio will be 3 to 2 because this is only up and over twice. And we can double check this to make sure that we agree with our 1, negative 1. If I start at negative 5, 4, and I go up, 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 right? So I go up, 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 then my new y coordinate is going to be 4. Having a bad time with negatives today. 4 up 3 times. Well, that would be negative 1. My x coordinate started at 5. I went over 2, over 2, over 2. That means over 6 from negative 5. That would put me at 1. And there we get exactly the same point. So there's 2 ways to look at the same problem. It's nice to have this in your pocket. It's a little bit faster and easier, but you need to know how to do this in case the numbers don't work out nicely.